Last night I was watching TV. I think it was MSNBC or CNN, and they had this medical doctor, reputable guy, talking about hydroxychloroquine and its use to treat the coronavirus. And he made an interesting, but I thought incredibly stupid remark. He said that it was irresponsible for Donald Trump, the president, to suggest that maybe this should be used to treat coronavirus because its use for that isn't approved by the FDA. And that may seem like a reasonable point, and I know it does seem reasonable to a lot of people because I see it all the time. I see it on Facebook, I see it on Twitter, I see it everywhere. But you have to think a little bit about what you just heard. And it's personal to me, and let me explain why. Some of you know, some of you may not. On November 12th of 2019, I had a kidney transplant. I waited 3.5 years for a kidney, and I was considering myself very fortunate that I got a kidney in November. Like I said, I'd waited 3.5 years for one, and I see November 12th almost as like a new birthday for me. I've been on dialysis, and average lifespan of dialysis is 5 years, some longer, some less. And I was pushing 4 years. And I'm getting older, and the older you get, the less likely it is you're going to get a kidney, the way they work things out. So I was happy to get one. When you come home after receiving a kidney, they over-medicate you with anti-rejection drugs because everybody's different. So what they do is they give you this massive amount of anti-rejection drugs, which suppresses your immune system so that you don't reject the kidney. And then gradually what they do while they're testing your blood for a couple of months is knock off the pills to get it as low as they can go, where you still you have some resistance, but not so much that you start rejecting the kidney. So when I came home after not quite a week, I was taking 19 of these pills a day. I'm currently down to 4. Now, the problem is when they put you on that much medication to suppress your immune system, dormant viruses in your body can flare up. And of course, you're susceptible to newer viruses as well. So I had to wear a mask everywhere I went. Nobody was allowed into the house who hadn't had a flu shot, stuff like that. The dormant viruses, the one you're probably most familiar with is shingles, which is, if you had chickenpox when you were a kid, it goes away, but it leaves this virus dormant in your system. And if your immune system is suppressed for whatever reason, I mean, I knew somebody who went through chemotherapy, suppressed her immune system. Next thing you know, she had shingles. There's another one, which is less well known, and it's got a scientific name, but it's generally called BK virus. It has nothing to do with Burger King. And it's present in many people. I don't know of the numbers most, but there's a lot. And it usually resides in your bladder or your kidneys. If you are yourself carrying it, or the person you get the kidney from was carrying it, because of the suppression of the immune system, it can flare up. And it won't kill you. It doesn't make you sick, per se, but it destroys the kidney from the inside. And you're susceptible to that. Now, I was tested. They test you after about 3 weeks when you come out. And sure enough, I had the BK virus. They test it with a rating of how many viral cells or something they see in a certain amount of your blood. So like my initial level was 7,500. And when it shows up, the first thing they do is they try to cut down on your medication, your anti-rejection medication, as much as they can, even to the point where you're risking a little bit of rejection to try to get a handle on this virus. That's the first thing they do. It didn't work with me. And the amount of virus went from 7,500 various stages up to 1.3 million, which is really getting bad. Some people I know get it worse. Before they got it under control and it started, coming back down. Now, if that effort on their part failed, I would have lost my kidney. It's just a question of when. And needless to say, having gone through, kidney transplant is a major surgery and recovery. It takes a couple of months. Who wants to go through that again? And, you don't know when you're going to get another kidney. Why this is personal to me with this hydroxy thing is when I look at the BK test results I get whenever they test it every 3-4 weeks to see where the levels are. At the bottom it says this test is not FDA approved. The Food and Drug Administration has not approved the test that they use to see if you have the BK virus. Without that test, they wouldn't know until it was too late. I mean, eventually, as a kidney fails, you'd start urinating blood, the urine would turn dark, there'd be all kinds of problems with it. By then, it's too late to do anything. So they have this test where they can find these traces of the virus in your blood, and that's how they know that you need to be treated. But the FDA hasn't approved it yet. All right. Next thing they do is they put you on a medication. It's called, the brand name is Arava. I forget what the scientific name is, very long. And I can't pronounce a lot of these things. So they put me on Arava. Now, Arava is, and this may sound familiar, it's a drug primarily used for people who have arthritis. It's approved by the FDA as an anti-arthritic drug. It's not approved for the second thing they use it for, which is people with lupus. Now, you will note that hydroxychloroquine is also used for arthritis and lupus. Why don't they use Arava? A simple reason, Arava is still under patent. And for example, a 30-day, 20 milligram supply of Arava costs $550. My insurance covers most of it. I pay like $16. I'm on a 40 milligram per day. It's 2 tablets a day, and that's $1,100. Whereas hydroxychloroquine's been around for 50 or 60 years, so it's cheap, dirt cheap compared to what the Arava costs. So it's not as widely used. I guess they use it on people that the other things don't work on for arthritis and lupus. But I'm on a drug that's similar to that, although it's still, a brand name drug and it's not offered in the generic. But it is not approved. The only thing it's approved for, right, with the FDA, I think, is arthritis. It's not approved for treatment of lupus, although they use it for that. And it's not approved for the treatment of BK virus in kidney transplant patients. So if I followed the advice, or my doctors followed the advice of this doctor expert that I saw on TV yesterday, I would lose my kidney. The only reason they know I had BK virus in its early stages, where they can still treat it, is because they're using a test that's not approved by the FDA. And then they're treating me with a drug which they're using off-label, which means it's approved for one thing, but they're using it for something entirely different, without the blessing of the FDA. And so when I listen to this moron, from my point of view, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a patient. I mean, if my doctors followed his advice, I'd lose my kidney. I would have gone through the kidney transplant process. And of course, now that I have BK virus, it's in my system, and even if I lose that kidney, it's still in my bladder, and when I get another kidney, it's going to be the same thing all over again. Basically, I would never be able to get a kidney if we followed this idiot's advice. And that's why I get so furious about this. I saw another expert, a medical expert, on a couple days ago, and he said that no medications should be used off-label. They should only be used for things that the FDA approves, which means you shouldn't use hydroxychloroquine to treat coronavirus. And I thought, think about that for a second. I mean, we're supposed to be talking about critical thinking. What treatment for coronavirus has been approved by the FDA? And it's basically none. Because it's only been around, it's only been a problem for us since what, January, really February, March in some ways. What drugs do they have that the FDA approved? And FDA approval takes, can take a year or two. What drugs do we have? What treatments do we have that are FDA approved for coronavirus? And the answer is none. I mean, if you listen to these two guys and you actually followed what they said, you would basically, if you were faced with a coronavirus guy, you'd put him in the hospital and hope that he lived. I mean, there's no treatment for coronavirus that's basically FDA approved. There's certainly no medications. I mean, there might be treatment, you can use breathing health assistance and respirators and things like that. But there's no drug that's been approved by the FDA for use against coronavirus. Nothing. Zilch. Zero. So we basically, it's an untreatable disease. But that's not the way things work. I mean, again, to use my example, if they followed these morons' advice, I would lose my kidney because the test they have is not yet FDA approved. And the drugs they're giving me are off label. They're not meant to be used for that. The FDA hasn't approved the use, but they give them to me anyway. Why do they give them to me? Why are they giving these to people, at Tampa General Hospital, the kidney patients who develop this get Caraba? And if you Google it online and you see it, it's used widely for transplant patients, especially kidney transplant patients, to deal with this problem. And it's not FDA approved. Doctors are using it all over the world to prevent the loss of transplanted kidneys to the BK virus. And that's the reality of how medicine works. I mean, this idea that, it's not FDA approved, you can't use it, it's moronic. It's stupid. So are these doctors stupid? I don't think they are. Or is it political? Is it because Trump's for it, everybody's going to be against it? But and that's fine. I mean, I don't know enough to know if hydroxychloroquine works in combination with the Z-Pak and in some cases with zinc. I don't know if it works. I don't know that it doesn't work. I've seen plenty of people on TV claim that it does. I haven't seen people on TV coming on who personally said it was used on them and it didn't work. Maybe that's because they're dead. But that could be, as they say, it's all anecdotal. I mean, once I met a guy from who'd been in a concentration camp in Poland. He was a Pole. He wasn't Jewish. And he told me about the things he saw there and some of the things that happened to him. Well, that's anecdotal. Does that mean the Holocaust didn't happen? I can't, because I knew one person who said he saw all this stuff. That's only anecdotal, so I can't really come out and say that there was a Holocaust. 11 million people died, 6 million Jews. I mean, it's just really absurd if you use critical thinking. That's what we're supposed to come out of college using, and not let idiocy or moronic attitude or politics cloud your judgment. Again, I'm not saying that everybody should get hydroxychloroquine because it's going to work. I don't know that it'll work. One of the most impressive things I saw that I watch is from Johns Hopkins University. They have this thing called MedCram, which they release one just about every day, different doctors. And this was at least 6 weeks ago. And he was talking about how he was talking about it with zinc, the Z-Pak, and the hydroxychloroquine, and how theoretically it would work to take care of coronavirus. And he explained the biochemical processes to get where you need to get. They know that zinc alone will kill coronavirus. The problem is you can't get the zinc from the bloodstream to get into the protein where the coronavirus is. What you have to do is you have to have some sort of other drug that allows it to get in, and that's where the hydroxychloroquine comes in. It's not that the hydroxy kills the vaccine, as he explained it. It opens the gates so that these other drugs, the Z-Pak or the zinc, or the Z-Pak and the zinc used together, get into the system and go after that. But they need something to allow them to pass through this membrane, and that's where the anti-malarial drug comes in. So, I see all this and I think about it, and, we'll find out. I mean, doctors are going to use hydroxychloroquine in treating. I mean, we know that they are. I saw the state rep from Michigan. This was during a period when her own governor had said nobody's allowed to use it. And she saw Trump talking about it, so she asked her doctor, and he said, let's give it a shot. So he got his hands on some, and despite what the governor had said, he treated her with it, and like in 48 hours, she was recovered. Now that is, of course, anecdotal, but we know this is going on, and I've seen doctors and nurses interviewed who said they're taking it as to prevent anything from getting it. And having looked as best I can as a layman at what I've seen online, it's conceivable that the errata that I'm taking may actually prevent me from getting coronavirus. Now, I'm not going to go out, and lick something that some person with coronavirus. I want to test it out. But it's conceivable that it would, because the processes that it uses are similar to get into this BK virus, which gets into my proteins in the kidney and destroys it. It's not inconceivable. Why don't they use it? Like I said, it's $550 a bottle compared to $6. So they're obviously going to use the other one first. But it's conceivable the treatment I'm under to prevent kidney rejection will help me, or maybe help, I hope so, prevent me from getting coronavirus. Because I would be highly susceptible. I'm 68 and I have another problem, a kidney problem. So this stuff really gets me upset, because I hear these so-called experts making these pronouncements about what we should and shouldn't do, when I know damn well from my own experience that my doctors aren't doing that. Like I said, they track my progress using a drug, a test that's not FDA approved, and they're treating me with a drug that's used off-label. In other words, it's an arthritis drug used to treat the BK virus, which is not an FDA-approved approach. So that if I listen to these experts, and my doctors, God forbid, follow the experts, me and many other people who got kidney transplants at Tampa General, because I'm not the only one who's getting these drugs, we'd all lose our kidneys, and we'd all be back on dialysis and sitting around and hoping for something else to come up. So it's really troubling. And I guess that's the main point I want to make in this video, that, listen carefully to what these experts are saying. Think it through. There is no treatment FDA approved for coronavirus. There's no drugs. There's nothing. Everything doctors are using, whether it's hydroxychloroquine or something else or whatever they're using, God knows around the world what's being tried. They're probably trying everything. Maybe somebody's trying Arava. Because there are no alternatives. Anything they try to give people who have this disease, whether it's hydroxy or something else, is not FDA approved. It's all off-label. And if you listen to these experts who don't want people to use hydroxychloroquine, they're basically saying, we can't use anything. There's nothing we can do. Just put people on respirators and put them in a hospital and hope for the best. Because why give them anything? Why give them any medication? I mean, there's literally no FDA treatment approved for hydroxy because it's so new. Maybe if this comes back again in a year or two, we'll have approved treatments by then. It may not be hydroxychloroquine. It could be something entirely different that they figured out work better. And that's fine. I'm not, an advocate for the drug. What I'm talking about is the process. What these people are saying is not how medicine works. And when it's understandable if I see a friend on Facebook say something like that. But when I see a scientist from a reputable organization or hospital taking these positions, I know that's not how it works. As a patient, I don't have to be a doctor. I don't have to have a PhD in biochemistry to know that that's not how things work. And I find it incredibly disturbing.